What's going on, guys? It's GBP baby. Welcome back to another video. Hope everybody's doing well, and let's dive straight into things. I didn't make a post last night purely because of the bank holiday, and I wasn't anticipating much movement on the Monday anyway. So yeah, we're going to start with a weekly review here on the Monday, and we're here on the monthly on dollar, as you can see, and I also have the economic calendar up to our right. So first, let's take a look at the economic calendar. You can see that we have high impact news on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday this week, which is quite interesting. There's a lot of news on the Thursday, so I am expecting there to either be a classic midweek reversal on the Thursday, or there'd be an expansion and our main run to liquidity on that Thursday. And then it looks like Tuesday is going to be quiet, and then Monday I don't think there was anything happening because of the bank holiday. So yeah, should be very interesting. And we are going to start on the monthly, and the reason for that is because we are coming to the end of April very fast now. So if anything, that means we either have already created the low of the month, or we're going to create the low very soon, and then we'd want to look and anticipate some kind of retracement. So first, let's get rid of that the economic calendar. And then there's a few things on the monthly I want to draw attention to. First, this fair value gap right here, which is what we're trading into. And I have drawn our attention to this before. We can see that we're traded down to the 50% level of that. And then we now have an inversion fair value gap as well between this open and this low. Sorry, this high and this low. So if price is going to return back up to this range at any point, we'd expect it to act as resistance. But that is quite premium, so I'm not really going to focus too much on that. But just for eyes sake, we want to acknowledge that would be an inversion fair value gap, and that we're anticipating price to continue to the downside. Now in terms of draws, obviously we want to see if we can fill the fair value gap here, but then I am also looking at this bullish order block that we have on the monthly down here as well. But again, since we're coming to the end of April, I doubt we're going to see much more expansion. However, moving into the month of May, we may want to start looking into those. So let's go down to the weekly, and you can see we've already had a lot of movement on Monday. We've opened and traded lower straight away after last week's very interesting price action. You'll remember me calling the high of last week. We tapped into that, and then since then prices rolled over and continued to expand to the downside. Now if we drop down to the lower time frame, as in on the weekly, you can see that we have these relative equal lows. I spoke about this in last week's videos as well, and I was saying how I do want to see price eventually run these for sell stops. So let's get that delineated. I'm going to mark that out as sell side liquidity, and the reason for that is because these are clear relative equal lows. We have 3 weeks worth of lows here, 1, 2, 3. So these should be significant sell stops where there should be sell side liquidity residing. So it'd be nice to see if price can start pushing down into that. And then over here, which is the open of that bullish order block from the monthly, you'll see there's a large consolidation. So it'd be nice to see if price can manage to tap into that, and I'll be looking very closely at this bullish order block. So I'll get that marked out as well, the open of that. And then I'll write weekly bullish order block. So now we have 2 levels in the discount that we want to see price move towards. Now again, I'm going to keep preaching this, but because we're moving to the end of the month, I'm not necessarily expecting us to reach down there this week or next week, but these are just my draws, as in I'm still anticipating price to eventually reach down here. In terms of the highest I'd want to see price trade this week, probably this low, if we're going to see any kind of retracement. The fact that we've opened, however, and traded lower straight away does leave room for potential retracement, but I think we need to drop down to the daily to get a closer look. And you'll see how we gapped lower on the Monday after that large bank holiday, and then as you saw today, we traded lower, and now we're about to probably stay in a range. Like I said, there's no high impact news tomorrow, so I anticipate us to stay in a consolidation, maybe take out that Monday low, and then like I said, as we move into Thursday, we may find a reversal. But that gap that we did have between Thursday and Monday is significant, as in if price does want to reverse, this is where its first target would be in the premium. So let's get that delineated, and we can write that as a daily volume imbalance, which is significant to price. And then, as I said, I do like the look of that sell side liquidity. So I'm going to take out the 50% level of this monthly fair value gap, and I'm going to mark out last week's low. Monday's low as sell stops. And then I would like to think that we can try and fill the fair value gap, as in moving into Tuesday, we may want to continue to trade lower. But again, I'm not expecting too much movement until the Wednesday. So make sure to turn on post notifications so you can tune in tomorrow. Let's go to the 4 hour, and you'll see how price today traded lower from Sunday right down, and then we've kind of retraced and we've filled this fair value gap. So if we are bearish, and we're going to remain bearish, price should at least trade back above this fair value gap, and moving into Tuesday we can see a continuation to attempt to fill that monthly fair value gap right here. So I'm going to make this black for now, and as we move down to the 1 hour, I am going to do daily dividers just so that we can see how we've traded since Sunday, which looks very interesting. So here's the Monday, then we have Sunday opening price right here, absolutely crazy gap. And then again, if we're going to see any type of retracement, I'm looking for this gap to get traded to. I just first would want to see that Monday low get ran, ideally, because I doubt price is going to just retrace back on itself, moving straight into that Tuesday. And then this fair value gap from the 4 hour should be able to provide enough resistance to help keep pushing price lower, if that makes sense. So let's mark out the Wednesday as well. I'm going to mark out that Sunday opening price, and you'll see how we're trading around below it, because if we get to Wednesday and Thursday and we're still below that Sunday opening price, it's likely that we can use that as a draw on liquidity, where we expect price to then expand to. This is assuming we do manage to stay below this 4 hour fair value gap moving into the new day. So let's just take that into consideration. We have a 15-minute here, and you can see how we're still in that consolidation. So I'll be paying close attention to see if price does want to stay below it. If we run this fair value gap, I'd then expect it to act bullishly as a bullish fair value gap, use it as support, and then we can probably target this a lot earlier in the week than anticipated, which is completely fine. It's just that based off the news and based off us coming straight off that bank holiday moving into Tuesday, I don't anticipate seeing too much. But price is clearly in a rush to get somewhere for us to gap like that, run straight down to this level, and then enter a consolidation like this. So that's going to be everything on dollar. Hope that all makes sense. Let's head on to GBP USD. Oh, and would you look at that? It looks like we've run out some buy stops which I've had delineated. Let's take a look. Buy side liquidity. I don't even recall where I called this out. If you probably oh, it must have been last week. But yeah, this is rejection block level. So last week I did speak about this being a rejection block level. But then to help us make it more simple, I just simplified it to be in a buy side liquidity level, and you can see that we've just ran that today, which is very interesting. So a lot of expansion on the Monday. I didn't expect that much considering it was bank holiday here, but hey ho. So if that is a rejection block level, that means that we expect price to bounce off of it. So we can draw a range around that, and you can see we're just floating around the opening of it. And then there's also a fair value gap here that looks like we're tapping into as well. So that would be its next calling point. Obviously, depending on how dollar wants to act. And then in terms of the discount, we have a fair value gap below here. However, this should act as a bullish fair value gap, because if we're bullish, then if price does tap into this, we'd want to see it act as support. So I want to mark out the 50% level of that. We'll make that black. And the lowest I'd want to see us trade this week, ideally, would be 25% level of that, if at all. So let's get that 25% level marked out. But as I said, if we do want to see dollar roll over, that means that there's potential for pound to carry on rallying, and in that case I'd want it to fill that fair value gap, which I've just delineated right here. So let's drop down to the daily, take a closer look. Very simple. Again, we've tapped up into these highs right here, which are rejection block levels, and that's why we got the reaction we have. So looking at this day as a whole, we can look at this day, and then we can look at the equilibrium, and technically this should, ideally even, it should act as support. So when we drop down to the 15-minute and such, this level should be significant, and we may be able to find PD arrays laying around there. So there's a fair value gap. It looks like a very classic day in terms of opening, creating a low and rallying. And remember, this is the 50% level of the daily range, so I'm happy for price to tap down into this. However, ideally, if we do see dollar want to continue to roll over to the downside, then I'd want to see GBP tap here at the very lowest and then turn around and trade higher with the expectations to try and fill that fair value gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing as I did on dollar, mark out the daily dividers. So we have Sunday right here, and we rallied straight off the bat into Monday. Oh yeah, Monday right here. So the rallying actually happened on the Sunday opening, and then it was Monday where we pretty much consolidated. This is that Monday low, so we may find that price wants to take out that sell stop before reversing on the back of it, coupled with the fair value gap. And again, this is the 50% level off that range that I'm looking at from the daily. So I want to see if we can tap down into there and then find support. If we can't find support, whole different story, and then we can start looking for shorts and obviously thinking about these relative equal lows. It's just uncommon for us to reverse on a Monday like that, and you know, so soon after running and rallying into a premium PD array. So although it's possible, it's just ideally not. And also we have high impact news on the Wednesday by the looks of things on pound. So there's reason as to why they may want to hold price or keep rallying it and then reverse it later on the back of what's it called? On the back of the news release. Basically, they're going to use the news release as fuel to send price in the opposite or whichever direction. So let's go to the 15-minute. You can see quite heavy consolidation, not the best to trade on Monday. There's a bullish order block on that 50% level I was talking about. So again, it'd be nice to see if we can tap into it, maybe early on London, in line with dollar, potentially creating some kind of high. And then I'd like to think that we can reverse and trade lower. So yeah, I'll be paying very close attention to this midpoint basically. And then Sunday opening price, so let's take into consideration again. We're rallying way above it right now. So if we get to Wednesday and Thursday and we're still above it, it's very high likelihood that we may get a Thursday reversal, especially with the amount of high impact news, remember. And then on the back of that, price will want to rally. We'll use that as a target for price to reach. So I hope that will make sense on pound, but that's my expectations for the week. I want to see us tap here, maybe create a high on Tuesday like a classic week. Moving to Wednesday and then Thursday, I'd want to see us a reversal, assuming that we've reached our premium PD array from the higher time frame, and then start to trade lower. But yeah, and again on the back of that, remember we're coming to the end of the month, so we want to see the high of the month being created this week ideally. So that's more reason as to why I would expect us to peak at this point and then have a retracement, because when we create candles, I'll do a diagram real quick. So imagine this is the monthly that I'm drawing right now. If we're creating the high, then I expect us to create that, and then I'd want to see us retrace back into the range of the month. Otherwise there won't be a higher wick. And don't get me wrong, there are some months where we can close on a high, it's just very rare, so we anticipate some high to be created and then us to retrace back into the range, which is what explains potentially this Sunday opening price for later in the week. And then the reason as to why I'd want to see us create the high earlier on in the week, if that makes sense. It's getting confusing, but I will mark out buy side for Monday because I'd like to think that can still get ran. So that's everything on pound. I hope that makes sense. Let's move on, finish up on euro USD as per usual. Oh, that's euro GBP. I haven't looked at that in a while. And you can see that euro has also ran a buy side liquidity target, which I drew our attention to. So what's interesting about this is because last week I had this level marked out, had this level marked out, and I had this level marked out, but it wasn't until that Sunday which we ran the buy side. This is where price just catches us off guard, and there's not really much we can do about that, but it's nice to see that our targets are being reached. So if you watch last week's videos, you'll be tuned in about that level that's just been ran. Let's take a closer look. From the weekly right here, we just ran those stops beautifully. And it does look like we've just tapped into a bearish order block as well right here. So we traded into that, but again, we're expecting a potential continuation or rally, and if we are going to have a large reversal on a monthly scale, as in if we're expecting ourselves to retrace back into the month, we may find divergence, and that would explain euro. So we might find that GBP may run stops, but euro may fail to run stops and just start retracing instantly, and in line with dollar or something, obviously on the inversion. So that's just something to take into consideration, but I am looking at this consolidation over here and the fact that we're trading within it. So price may want to tap deeper into that. Let's go to the daily. And I will mark out Monday as a potential buy side target. It's in line with pounds. And then in terms of discounts, we'd want to see price obviously return back towards these bullish order blocks once it's ready. But let's go to the 4 hour. Again, crazy Sunday trading. We're tracing back into the range, but if we look at the current trading range, so the last down close candle right up to here, the lowest we want to see price trade would be equilibrium, and then we want to see if it can provide support or not. So same thing, drag that right through, and as we drop to the low time frames, hopefully we can find PD arrays surrounding that could support a potential support on the, that could support on the back of that, if that makes sense. So there's some stops below here that price we want to trade down into tomorrow, and then we want to see a reversal on the back of some kind of fair value gap or something. So here's a 15-minute consolidation right there. I do like the look of these. So we'll mark that as sell stops. But then on the back of that, I want to see us trade higher and potentially run that Monday high in line with what I was saying on GBP USD, potentially dropping lower to then trade higher. And then obviously dollar in that case would have to rally to some extent to then trade lower. But yeah, the way we gapped does make that a little more difficult. So let's go to the Euro USD again. And I'm going to get the daily dividers here as well. Make sure to turn on post notifications because it'll be interesting to follow how this week does play out. And I do think it's potential that it's possible that non-farm payroll is next week or the week after, which is crazy. But here's Monday's trading again, quite interesting, but classic in that we created the high at 5 a.m. during the London session, low at 11 a.m. during the New York session. That's classic ICT concepts. So it'd be nice to see the same thing again, maybe create the high and then create a low, and then maybe on Wednesday we then get that reverse and start pushing towards that Monday high. But again, it's best to just let that Tuesday trade at this point, especially after the bank holiday yesterday. Let's get this Sunday opening price like so. We'll drag that through the entire week as per usual. And then I'm not going to be targeting that Sunday price until I'm happy or convinced that the high could have been created. So let's get that Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday. And again, the lowest I want to see price trade moving into Tuesday would be the equilibrium of the current trading range. Why? Because I'm convinced we're not finished yet. And if we aren't finished yet, the 50% level should be respected and we should get a reversal on the back of that. So yeah, tomorrow's going to be very telling of that. But I do believe it's just marching back down to equilibrium. So that's going to be everything, guys, for this video. Don't forget to drop a like, drop a comment, smash subscribe, join the mailing list, join me over on Discord. All the links are in the description. The Discord has been very active recently, so I do suggest joining and turn on post notifications. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.